So this was supposed to be my real season 4 opener, but it was a little bit longer show than my normal shows. And I wasn't looking forward to writing out 6 pages of text. So, this is supposed to be the real opener. For season 4, something a little different. A business card that my dad showed me, that his dad got for him one of those times they were down in Arizona for spring training. Those were actually business trips for my Gramps. He was an insurance lawyer who worked for a company whose name fits in perfect with this intro. So let's travel to Paris, the city of lights, because that's where Eddie was born in 1920. Growing up, he didn't speak a lick of French, because he was born in Paris, Texas. He would live in the area for 100 years, and 7 decades of those 100 years were spent in professional baseball. Played for 13 seasons in the majors, and he was on 7 of the 8 AL teams. He was a 4-time All-Star and a 1948 World Series champ as the Cleveland Indians starting first baseman. And later, he would be a coach on 6 big league teams. Ted Williams said this about Eddie Robinson. He was underrated and the best clutch hitter I ever played against. William Edward Robinson, nickname Eddie, first base, MLB debut 1942. Things started out good for Eddie until the Great Depression hit and his dad lost his auto shop business, started drinking, and then left the family when Eddie was 12. He would help his mom at first by picking cotton, and then in high school would get up at 4:45 in the morning, catch a cab cross town and load trucks for his uncle, and then go to school. He also worked Saturdays, which didn't leave him with much free time. Yet he started playing semi-pro ball in 1936 at the age of 16 with the Coca-Cola bottlers, who were known for their red uniforms supplied by Coke. Eddie Robinson signed with the Knoxville Smokies in 1939 for a $300 bonus. But before leaving Paris, he went around town and paid off his tabs, then went out and bought his mom a brand new washing machine. They assigned him to the Valdosta Trojans, Class D of the Georgia-Florida League, as low as you can get. End of the season, manager Bill Morrell said to Eddie, "May as well go back to Paris and open up an ice cream parlor." So Eddie practiced, and the following season turned it around, and in 1941 got an invite to spring training with the Baltimore Orioles of the International League. They assigned him to the Elmira Pioneers, and together with Sal Magley, they won that league's championship. In 1942, Eddie was having a great season and was called up to the bigs by the Cleveland Indians. When the season was over, Eddie enlisted, got married, and would miss 3 years of MLB while in the Navy. He said he had fun playing ball with guys like Dom DiMaggio and Phil Rizzuto. They were called the Navy Blue Jackets and played against Pee Wee Reese's team in the 1943 Naval World Series. He said playing well was a motivating factor because if you didn't, you might get shipped off to sea. He also said it was a cushy gig as long as you were winning. Baseball kept me out of the action. That was true, but somehow, while in the service, he injured his leg bad enough that it needed surgery. Sawbone doctor botched the surgery. The follow-up surgery didn't help, and Eddie never fully recovered. This would not stop him from becoming a fixture in MLB for the next 50 years. After his military duty, he was back at it in 1947 as the Cleveland Indians starting first baseman. But things were about to change for Eddie, and he's going to have a bad couple of days. Starts out on July 5th. When he gets to the clubhouse before the game, word is there's a new second baseman on the team, being groomed to take over for Joe Gordon. Yeah, so that's baseball. He's a black fella. He's a what now? So when player manager Lou Boudreau has the players line up in the clubhouse so he could bring in Larry Doby and introduce the first black player, not only on the team, but in the league. Some of the Indians wouldn't shake Larry's hand, and a few turned their backs. I don't know if Eddie turned his back or not, but he didn't shake Larry's hand. On this July 5th, Larry Doby makes his MLB debut in Chicago in the 7th inning against the White Sox. He's put in to pinch hit. He does not have a good at-bat, to say the least. Just part of his bad first day at work. The next day's doubleheader against the White Sox, Larry was told he might be playing first base. He didn't have a first base glove, and of the two first basemen on the team, only Eddie Robinson was right-handed. Poor Larry. It's only his second day on the team, and he has to ask a favor from a guy who wouldn't shake his hand. You know how that request was going to turn out. I don't think Larry asked him. Would you? On the other side of the coin, you got Eddie. He's never played with blacks. Now his new teammate is a black guy who is taking over his position and wants to use his glove, the tool of his trade. So let's see. You're going to take my job and you're going to do it using my glove. Yeah, I don't think so. Larry had to walk over to the White Sox dugout and ask one of their first basemen to borrow his leather. Larry got in the first game as a pinch hitter only. Now it's game 2 of the doubleheader, and Manager Lou Boudreau is not making it easy for Larry to make friends and lists Larry Doby as the starter on the lineup card for game 2. Where? At first base in place of Eddie Robinson. Oh boy. So Eddie's asked to grab some pine meat and watch as the new black guy begins the process of taking his job away. Oh, but it's going to get worse for Eddie. As you know, Larry didn't own a first base glove and was unsuccessful trying to borrow a glove before the first game. But Larry, you can't keep going over to the opponent asking for gear. Which brings us to this. Who asked Eddie to lend his glove to Larry for that second game? Some say it was Manager Lou Boudreau who asked Eddie. Others say it was a guy named Spud, the team's so-called traveling secretary, a go-between guy hired by Indians owner Sport Shirt Bill Veeck, who anticipated these racial problems arising. Most likely it was both guys that asked Eddie to lend the leather, with the manager asking first. And you know what the Texas boy from a small town said? No. Probably followed by a few other choice words. But Lou Boudreau's not going to force him. He doesn't want to lose the clubhouse. I think he gets Spud involved to talk to Eddie. Sport Shirt Bill hires smart guys, and Spud already knows what the answer from the redneck is going to be. But he has to ask anyway. So he does. And Eddie says, I won't lend my glove to a nigger. So Spud, who's 2 steps ahead of him, says this, will you lend it to me? Eddie gave it to him. Story goes, Eddie says, you can have it, and flipped it to him. It was Joe Gordon who came out of the dugout with the first base glove and handed it to Larry. What I'd like to know, did Bill Veeck buy Eddie a new glove? And even if he did, well, now Eddie's still got to break it in. That was the first and last game Larry Doby would start that season. Eddie Robinson was playing well in 1947. Then, mid-season, fouled one off his ankle, breaking it. He would come back in 1948 and have a pretty good season as the Cleveland Indians' first baseman, committing only 7 errors all season, but hitting only .254. He did have a good World Series, though, hitting 321 at-bats. But he didn't get along with manager Lou Boudreau, who favored veterans, so Eddie was traded to the Senators for Early Wynn and Mickey Vernon. Eddie Robinson was the AL starting first baseman in the 1949 All-Star Game at Ebbets Field, and in his first at-bat, he hit a single off Warren Spahn, knocking in Joe DiMaggio, helping them to win that game. Eddie joined the Chicago White Sox for 1951, and that's where he met fellow Texan, White Sox manager Paul Richards. They would become lifelong friends and connected for years to come. Special day came for Eddie in 1951 when he smacked one over the roof at the old Comiskey Park, making him the first White Sox player to do this. And doing that made him an instant South Sider legend. He played his best ball with the club in 1952 and was selected an All-Star and picked up a few MVP votes. Eddie would get a few MVP votes in 2 other seasons as well. For 65 years, from 1936 until 2001, Eddie Robinson was a fixture in baseball and would live to be 100 years old. Before his passing, Eddie Robinson held the oldest moniker for a dozen different baseball milestones. My favorite? Eddie was the last living major leaguer to have his career interrupted by serving in the military during World War II. Okay, so let's leave Paris and let's head on over to New York. Eddie Robinson and the Indians are in town to play the Yankees. It was a special day in more ways than one because Babe Ruth was making his final appearance at Yankee Stadium on this day, June 13th, 1948, just 2 months before he passed away. The club was celebrating the 25-year anniversary of the opening of Yankee Stadium, and at this event were many Yankee greats from the past. But more importantly, Babe Ruth was there to speak at his jersey retirement ceremony. He was skinny and frail and looked small in his Yankee pinstripes. There's a Pulitzer Prize-winning photo entitled "The Babe Bows Out." It shows him standing at home plate with his back to the camera, using what turned out to be Bob Feller's bat as a cane, an iconic photo in baseball history. So after a long line of former Yankee greats were introduced, it was time for Babe Ruth to come out of the dugout for the last time and make his final walk to home plate to address the crowd. I read that even the reporters and photographers noticed Babe looking shaky in the dugout. Eddie Robinson, he also noticed this. And as Babe started to get up, Eddie got up, grabbed a bat, and handed it to the Bambino so as he could steady himself. Nobody else made a move to help the living legend who was pretty much dying right in front of their eyes. I sure hope I would have made the move to help, but sometimes when you're in awe, in shock, or just really confused, you don't react like you should. Happened to me twice as a kid. Two of my biggest regrets because both times I didn't make the move. So I still don't know if my dad watches this show or not, but hey, Pop, if you're watching this, thanks for all the fun and great times we've had over the years. And I love you, Dad. I love you, Mom.